Chapter 2 on WGN. I spend some time every day looking at YouTube just to see what's hot and what's not out there. And if you search like top-rated, most viewed, most discussed videos, the one politician whose name comes up over and over again, not just for one video clip, but for a whole host of things, is Ron Paul. Ron Paul, the Republican from the 14th District of Texas, who's running for the presidency. Remember, he was in that Republican debate where there's about 150 of them, and they all stand in lines, they all wear nice suits with white shirts and red or blue ties, and they had the debate, and he was the guy that kind of got into it with Rudy Giuliani. If you go to Wikipedia, you'll see some of the details about him. Paul advocates by the way, in 1988, Bush beat Dukakis, the number 3 vote getter. The number 3 vote getter in 88 was Ron Paul. Advocates a strictly limited role for the federal government. He has earned the nickname Dr. No because he is a medical doctor who votes against any bill that he believes violates the Constitution. He has never voted to raise taxes or congressional pay. He refuses to participate in the congressional pension system. He's never taken a government-paid junket. He voted against the Patriot Act, the Military Commissions Act of 2006. He is the only Republican running for the presidency who voted against the war in Iraq. And then I'm going on through Wikipedia. 1953, 220-yard dash champ for the state of Pennsylvania. Second in the quarter mile. If you know anything about running, you know running the quarter mile is the hardest thing to do on the planet. I always have a special place in my heart for people who do that. He did that. He paid for this first year of college at Gettysburg College with saved-up newspaper delivery and lawnmower money. He delivered the mail and laundry on the side while he went to college. For a year, he managed the college coffee shop. And here's what he supports. Free trade, handgun ownership, tight border security. He is a Republican. He opposes abortion. He opposes capital punishment. He opposes gay marriage, income tax, and the war on drugs. His voting is consistent in rejection of a welfare state role for the federal government. And the list goes on and on. Congressman Ron Paul's on the phone. Congressman, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm voting for you. It's decided.
Oh, good.
And by the way, not because I agree with all of your positions. I, in fact, don't. But really, who does? And what I think, me personally, what I like is the sort of meat and potatoes, nuts and bolts, basic all-American life that you've not only led, but sort of, it sounds like, espouse.
Yeah.
But I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
Let's go back first and foremost to maybe what people most recently saw you in, and that was the Republican debate that I was describing where you and Rudy Giuliani sort of got at it. Describe for me your position on that issue in that debate.
Well, we were talking about foreign policy, and I implied that we ought to look at the causes and the motives behind those who would want to attack us here, such as with suicide terrorism and the origin of the incentive to come here on 9/11. And my comment was the insurgents, the radical Islamists come here not because we're free and prosperous and wealthy, but because we're over there. We're on their land. We're on their holy land, and we impose ourselves on them, and that's very annoying and very upsetting, just as it would be if somebody came into our country and he didn't agree with that and got rather annoyed that he said he had never heard of such an explanation. But it's not my explanation. I learned that from the CIA and other individuals who have proposed these ideas.
You don't support the notion that we need to take the fight to them rather than wait for them to bring the fight here?
Well, it depends. It would be best that we had never started the fight. Once they hit us, I supported going after the Al-Qaeda.
You voted for the attack on Afghanistan, but not for the war in Iraq.
Right, but even that wasn't a very good vote because we didn't do anything about it. We let Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden go into Pakistan, and Pakistan's our ally, so it didn't work out very well, and we've occupied Afghanistan now, and that's not going well, and I think there are commercial reasons behind that. So.
But you're a guy who wants to be the President of the United States, and Giuliani represents a certain thing about what happened on 9/11. Did you realize as you were walking, as those words were leaving your mouth in that debate, did you think this is going to be a tough sell, that this can politically harm me, that this might be perceived wrong? the notion that we brought it upon ourselves?
No, I never really gave it a thought. I couldn't believe that there was somebody that had never heard the explanation that I gave, because it's accepted by those who have studied it. It was even in the 9/11 Commission report.
But let me make sure I understand then what that it is. Are you saying that... Here we go. Are you saying that we invited 9/11?
No, I didn't use the word invited. I said, a contributing factor, a major factor. It's sort of looking at the motive. If you're looking for the motive of a murder, you don't say that they brought it upon themselves and blame the person that was murdered. No, we don't do that.
Yeah, but
you want to know why they might have been motivated to do it.
Well, I can see why people in Iraq are upset with us right now. But it seemed to me like Afghanistan, certainly at the time, was a logical place to strike back after 9/11.
Right.
After 9/11. So what did we do prior to 9/11?
Well, we had been bombing Iraq for over 10 years, and we had bases in Saudi Arabia. That's what was the most annoying to Osama bin Laden, that he's a Saudi, and that was his home country in the Holy Land, and we defied it by having troops and bases on that land. And also, we've been very much involved in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
But the Saudi government was complicit in our having bases. It's not like we invaded Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, but he hated the Saudi government.
But who are we working with here? The government of Saudi Arabia or Osama?
Well, I'm not picking sides on that. I'm explaining why they were so annoyed with us.
Yeah. Well, it does seem like they overreacted then. Would you give me that?
That they overreacted?
From our
viewpoint, yes. From their viewpoint, they are very logical.
Well, what's your viewpoint on that?
Well, I think they violently overreacted. But I think the Japanese violently overreacted, too, to our boycott of their oil in World War II. But you have to know how people act before you participate in these interventions. I mean, you could say the Iranians overreacted in 1979 by taking our hostages. But didn't we overreact by throwing out Mossadegh in 1953 and putting in the Shah for 25 years?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to all those questions, but I think what I want to hear you say, or what other people want to hear you say, is something more sympathetic to the victims of 9/11 than maybe we brought this upon ourselves. 3,000 people died, no fault of their own.
Well, I'm trying to put it in the proper perspective. Of course, I'm sympathetic, but I'm trying to figure out why it happened so I can prevent it the next time. And how can you be more sympathetic for somebody who's been murdered? You can't blame them, but you could look at maybe the situation and the policies that might have contributed to it. You can't have more sympathy than that. Is trying to have the truth out and try to prevent it from happening again.
Are you a bit of an isolationist? I mean, I'm reading also that you oppose U.S. involvement in Darfur, even when it's humanitarian. Mm-hmm. You don't think we should be involved there, right?
Yeah, but the term isolationist is the wrong term, because an isolationist is one that believes in mercantilism and closed borders and high tariffs and protectionism, and that's the opposite of what I believe in. I believe in free trade and travel as best you can. And
well, then why shouldn't we be helping somebody like the people of Darfur?
Because you're using force to do it. I think you can, and I think I can. But if you don't have the money in the government and you print the money and you create inflation, you're destroying the lives of many people here in this country through the higher cost of their living. So you're stealing from somebody here. So I reject the notion of using force even to do good, because you have to do bad to do good if you use force. It's like telling people how they must live their lives. And this whole idea of spreading our goodness, the neocon philosophy is we're spreading our goodness in the Middle East.
Yeah.
But they use force, and you say, well, why don't we use force? We're going to teach them democracy.
Hold on a second. I understand how the export of democracy has not gone well, and I don't think you can either. However, in Darfur, they're not asking for democracy. They're asking for an end to the genocide.
Right. And that's a good motive.
Well, so what's the downside to that? That it creates inflation here because it's more expensive?
Where do you get the food?
The food?
You have to steal the food
from whom?
From the American people.
Okay, hold on. It's just funny the language you choose. We have to steal the food from the American people.
Right, because where does the government get anything? They don't produce anything. They have to take it from somebody. And I say when you're doing these humanitarian things, the greatest burden falls on the poor people in this country because they suffer from the inflation. Because we either have to borrow the money or we have to print the money, and these are great burdens on the middle class, and that's why the middle class is dwindling, because we don't have money in the bank. We're spending about $500 billion a year we don't have, so there's always a cost. Yeah, you can look at this on one side and say, yes, this is good, this is humanitarian, but the principle, the philosophic principle, is identical in Darfur as it is in spreading democracy. You're using force. It's just that you can see the force that you're using when you drop bombs, but you don't see the force when you use compulsion and taxation and inflation.
Yeah, and that's what this is getting
goodness.
to.
That has to be done charitably.
That's overriding in your thinking, isn't it? That if you're spending money you don't have, that sounds like that's the greatest ill government can do to the American people.
Well, it's pretty dangerous because it always ends badly. It ends up with the destruction of the economy and ends up with high inflation, ends up with a very weak currency. Like today, everybody that had a dollar in the bank lost a lot of money because the dollar went down sharply, and it's going to go down more, too.
Hold the line for just one more minute, if you would, and then we'll let you go after a quick break and just one more quick segment with Congressman Ron Paul from Texas, 14th District, running for the presidency on the Republican. 27, we're talking with Ron Paul, the congressman from Texas, the Republican running for the presidency. If you turn on Bill Maher, if you turn on Jon Stewart or Stephen Colbert for that matter, you'll see this guy. He is the darling of, well, it's a comedy channel, but it's still a bunch of people who talk about politics a lot. Congressman, you still there?
I am here.
I mean, it would be nice if you were getting that much exposure. Well, you probably are on CNN or Fox or elsewhere, but boy, those guys on the comedy channel love you. And not because they're making a joke of you, but they like the things you've said.
Yeah, I'm not even a very funny guy, and they have me on.
And they're all liberals. They're all Democrats.
Oh, nobody told me that.
Well,
I don't even know whether you're a liberal or a conservative, but I'm glad I'm on your show.
Rita's in Barrington. You're on WGN. Rita, hello.
Hi. I'd just like to comment that it outrages me. Just recently heard a statistic, about people, over 40% of people still think that Iraq was involved with the whole September 11th thing. And when you think about 15 of the 19 people that are involved in September 11th were were
Saudis.
Saudis. And the focus is so wrong, but of course the opportunity is not good because the Saudis are part of our support for petroleum, and I just get so irritated to hear any focus on something that is so, to me, off balance.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Let him react to that. Congressman?
Well, I think she has a very good point because, in theory, I guess we should have invaded Saudi Arabia. But I think the fact that she pointed that out means that's even more reason to support the idea of, Osama bin Laden also being Saudi. They were all very annoyed with our foreign policy. They didn't attack Sweden or Switzerland. But it's amazing how the propaganda machine works. Is still close to half the American people think that Iraq had something to do with it, and they don't even understand that Saudi Arabia had more to do with it. And right now, this whole propaganda machine is working very, very hard to condition the people to support war against Iran. You can't imagine how strong that is. Almost every week we have resolutions coming up condemning Iran and more sanctions. That we're failing in Iraq, not because of our failure, but because the Iranians have sent some guns over there, and it goes on and on. So I'm afraid this war is going to spread.
You and I should talk again another day. I appreciate your time. I'm out of time today. I know you can't come on with us tomorrow, but sometime in the next few weeks, let's have another conversation.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be on your program.
Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Congressman Ron Paul from Texas. This is the voice of Chicago.